From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Tiger Cats Game Day with Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly.
Welcome back to Tiger Cats Game Day, presented by Tiffany Gate Fresh Gourmet on the Ticats Audio Network. It is Week 5, Game 4 for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and they are hosting the 1-2 Ottawa Redblacks tonight at Tim Hortons Field, 7 p.m. It's going down, the first of 3 matchups between these teams, and as always, to kick it off, your pregame show is Courtney Stephen, joined by Mike Daly. And Mike, we're fresh off the bye week. We've got an 0-3 Ticats team going up against a 1-2, I should say, Ottawa team. How does this game fit into the storyline of the season as we're going into Week 5 here?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last time with Montreal. It's still an East Division battle, right? So no matter what time of year this comes at, when it comes in the season, you need to get these wins under your belt, right? Because we've talked about this, and it happens every single year. It's a tight race at the end of the year to get into that first, second, sometimes that third position into playoffs for that crossover. These are important, right? And yes, they're going to see Ottawa 3 times this year, but each one of these is equally as important as it would be at the end of the season as well, right? It's always these battles for the East. These are the important ones. So to have it at home to start, to get to feel out this Ottawa team for 2023, I'm looking forward to it. And it's going to be a test for the Cats to come off this bye week and be like, you know what, where do we actually stand, right? Because, we'll never say a must win at the beginning of this, but they need some sort of confidence behind them.
Absolutely. And coming into this game, there's 2 teams who are really searching for some momentum. Last week, Ottawa beat Edmonton 26-7, which was actually a pretty good demonstration of the potential that they do have, even though they did it in an unorthodox fashion. There was 8 different receivers who caught the ball. They really put the ball on the ground and ran it a ton, actually. One back had 17 carries, and we'll get into that. Lewis Ward did his thing. It was a group effort, whereas on the other end of the spectrum, or on the other side of the ball, you've got the Ticats, who were on a bye week, but they are 0-3, one of 2 winless teams in the CFL between them and Edmonton, still searching for their first win. And it hasn't been the season that anybody in Hamilton was hoping for to this point, but like you said, it is very early. So this game could be a very good chance for that Ticats team to get started in the right direction and really spin things back to the direction they want to head. So let's talk about who's going to be on the field for this game. There have been some movement in both of these rosters and some big changes. So we'll talk about first on the Ticat side. We've got Coulter Woodmansey coming back into that offensive line group. His presence was missed, and to have him back in there, it allows Sartor, the first game he had last week, or I should say before the bye week was his first game, he's moving to the right tackle, and then you're going to have David Beard, Brandon Revenberg, and you're going to have Kemp at the left tackle. So that group is getting back one of their main guys. That's got to give some confidence to Matt Schiltz, who's getting his second consecutive start. And there's a couple of other folks in the mix, like Kyle Loxley. I'm not sure how much we'd really see from him, but for those who watch the CFL, he was a quarterback in Edmonton just a few short weeks ago, got in the game for one play, fumbled a snap, and then he ended up in Hamilton. So who knows what we can expect to see from those new names, but what's to be made of the folks who are in for the Ticats?
Yeah, and just the first thing that stood off the page for me was Kyle Loxley wearing number 89, right? Like, whatever that means, maybe he lines up at receiver, maybe not, right? But the first thing I thought, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting, right? But that's how it goes sometimes in the CFL. Your time runs out at one place, you come into another place, and he's done some short yardage stuff before, and I'm sure they'll trust him to get in there and do a couple sneaks. He's a bigger body, really athletic, ultra-athletic guy back there, so interested to see how they use him. Probably not a bunch this first time out, with him in the dress mix. But the other thing I want to take kind of a little bit of attention to is Tunde Adeleke is out for this game. Right, has a little bit of injury, nursing something. So Stavros Katsantonis is in. And Court, you and I have, I've played with them. You've been around him enough. We've seen enough film of Stavros. And the one thing the Ticats are missing on defense is going and getting that ball, right? And what Stavros does is he is just a type of guy where not really sure how he does it every once in a while, but he is around that ball all the time, right? So I'm very interested to see how this works. Listen, Tunde Adeleke is one of the best safeties in the league, right? We know this. But Stavros brings in a different atmosphere back there on how he's going to approach this game. So maybe can take a couple advantages of, maybe a missed throw from a new quarterback that's getting his first start in Hamilton this year. And maybe we'll dive into that a little bit on Mazzoli, but interested to see how Stavros is going to do with his first start this year as well.
Totally. And, if I was to compare the two players, just speaking about up and down between Tunde coming out and what will be missing from his game and what Stavros brings to the roster, I think when you talk about Toon, he's very dynamic athlete. And so that allows you to put him in different positions. In 2022, we saw him featured at the field half, which is a wide open space. There's not a lot of help. You've got to really understand the timing of routes and be able to play man to man with somebody who has the waggle. Now, it's a little bit different than playing safety and covering the waggle because you're closer to those linebackers and you have a little bit more support. Whereas at the field half, you're really out there by yourself. A lot less window dressing to make it hard for the quarterback to pick you apart. So he brings that dynamic and he can get down and cover with the best of them. And that's one of the most advantageous things about his toolkit that he brings to a team. But I believe Stavros Katsantonis is a better ball hawk than Tunde Adeleke as far as see ball, get ball. Now, Tunde can go and get it, don't get me wrong, but I think Stavros has a knack for playing center field. And that's really what I'm looking for. It's not as much the big hits and things of that nature. He definitely can tackle. He's a special teams monster. And we know you can't make a career on teams without being a great tackler. But it's specifically, like you mentioned, locating the ball, covering ground, and then getting to those tips and overthrows. That's the impact I expect Stavros to make. And I'll be anxiously awaiting to see if he takes advantage of that. And I think we'd be remiss to not mention, Lawrence Woods III will not be in this game. And he's a guy who had been starting and on special teams. So for him to be out of the game and to have Lawson Jr. coming in at the corner and then to have McAllister taking on the return duties, you're going to have two players filling the role of one guy. That'll also be another storyline to watch, but I think we can get into the special teams battle and things a little bit more down the road. First, I'd like to talk about this Ottawa offense. Big storyline for them in Ottawa is, of course, Jeremiah Masoli is back in the lineup after taking 1 year off. And this team last week started to get some momentum. They're coming off a much needed win. They're looking to build on what they had going last week. How much of a lift is it for guys in that locker room to get Jeremiah back while they're feeling a little like they're feeling themselves a little bit? They just had a win, like a 3-score win. How big is this for them? Is this add to that? Or do you think this potentially could offset that momentum because now you have a new guy behind center who didn't actually win the game last week?
Yeah, listen, I would say you're correct in terms of it offsetting that and really, kind of messing up the flow that they had from last game, but not at all with Mazzoli coming in, because what they did last game was they, like you mentioned at the beginning of the show, they ran the ball extremely well, and that's how they won the game. So if it was that the other quarterback in there last week or the week before were playing out of their minds and then Mazzoli came back, that would be a different thing, but that wasn't the case. Right? Other parts of Ottawa had gotten that game done against Edmonton, and now to insert really the leader of this Ottawa team as of the start of last year with the whole revamp with Sean Burke coming over there. Mazzoli was that heartbeat of the team and showed it at the beginning of the year until that injury. I think him being back in is going to give all those guys around him a little extra juice of energy, a little extra feeling of, yeah, okay, now we're ready to roll as a team. And Court, you and I have been around Mazzoli enough, and the Ticats, Tiger Town, all that stuff, they've been around Mazzoli enough that everybody's like pretty happy for Mazzoli to be back, right? There's really no Hamilton fan, there's no Hamilton player, anybody that's been around him before that's like, oh yeah, we got to get Mazzoli, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I hope he plays over. Everybody's happy for this guy to be back, right? So that just shows the type of guy he is. So you could imagine what's going on internally with Ottawa. But now with Mazzoli back and being able to make the throws he can, and DeMontre Tuggle running the way he has, and Jackson Bennett also spelling him off and being able to run the way he is, it's a pretty dynamic offense for them to have to deal with right now as the Ticats.
Yeah, DeMontre Tuggle, 17 carries, 126 yards, and a touchdown last week versus Edmonton in just his second start. And then spelling him off of the bench was Jackson Bennett, former Ticat, with 8 rushes for 44 yards, averaging over 5 yards a carry. This is a guy who played Sam linebacker for a couple years. And so, I mean, between the two of them, 25 carries, you got 170 yards. That's a rushing attack. That is a rushing attack by all accounts. And so this defensive line of the Ticats and also the linebackers, they're going to be asked to make a lot of tackles. And you know what? I'll take that one step further, because in the CFL, especially when you get into the 2-back formations and you're going to see Marco Dubois in the game, the fullback for Ottawa, he's the only person who actually caught a touchdown last week, believe it or not. When they get into those 2-back formations, you're going to have the Sim linebacker. You're going to see Chris Edwards. You're going to see Stavros in and around the box being added to the blocking scheme. And so the DBs are going to have to make tackles. And if they make those tackles at 7 or 8 yards down the field, as opposed to making them at 5 or 6 yards down the field, that's going to change the tempo of this game, because first down turns into new first downs when they get a chance to just break out and have explosive runs. So I think that helps a guy like Jeremiah coming back. But make no mistakes, when I knew Jeremiah as a teammate, I always used to call him Deep Ball Soli. And that was from the days when he was the scout team quarterback and Zach Caleros was at the helm, to the point when he was the featured guy. He never wanted to just play the short game. He wanted to score and put up points. So it'll be a great matchup between him and Stavros in that back end, and the rest of those guys, Richard Leonard and Javian Elliott. It will be a great opportunity for them to get some deep balls and see really who's going to win the 50-50 balls, because I think those opportunities will show up in this game. And just talking about the Ticats defense, they've allowed 112 points. That's 9th in the CFL, and for those who are counting, there are only 9 teams in the CFL, so it's not that good. Allowing 294 passing yards per game, 113 rushing yards per game. So these are not numbers to write home about by any stretch of the imagination, but you got to believe that Mark Washington is putting his foot down, and those guys, they have a lot of pride over there. They've got to say the buck stops with me. It's not necessarily for anybody to be a superhero, but going into this game, you got to think that there's a point of emphasis for this defense specifically to apply some pressure and make some things happen. If you're on that defense, how are you entering this game? What's your mindset as a Tiger Cats defensive player?
Well, you take into account this bye week, right? So coaches are going to go back and they're going to look at what's working, what's not working. They have a lot of time to do that, right? As soon as these bye weeks come up, that's when you're able to go look and, you hear Coach O say it all the time, the rear view mirror. Right, and check out what happened, check out what was going on, right? During the regular season week where you're playing game after game, you don't really necessarily have that time because you're right on to the next team that next day, right? So I think what Mark Washington's going to do, he's going to go back, look at what's working well, right, and try to put that at the forefront, play that a little bit more, whether it's simple zones, whether it's trying to get more simple for these new back-end guys to be able to start playing together, right? Because the way football works, especially as a defense and especially trying to work in a group, is you need to start with walking, even crawling at some point, right? And being able to get these simple reads down so you're sharp and able to make plays on the ball. And right now, that's not exactly what we're seeing from this Ticats defense. There's not really these big splash plays that we're seeing too often that they need in order to spark the offense, in order to spark the special teams. So I think what you got to do is you have to get back to the simple stuff where it's easy reads for these guys so that they can now play as fast as possible. Because when you know exactly what you're doing and exactly what you're looking at with your eyes, then it's easier and easier and easier, right? So I think that's what we're going to look at is nothing special, no new nuanced defenses that people are going to say, oh, this is brand new. No, it's going to get back to the basics. They have to almost reset to try to make some of these plays. But on top of that is when that play is there to be made, it has to be made, right? We say it all the time. The DB that leads the league in picks is just the one that catches the ones that come to him, right? He's just got to catch them. That's it, right? So this is what this Ticats defense needs to do. You just need to make the plays that come to you as you're playing this simple defense, being able to do these easy reads. That's what they have to end up doing. Ultimately, to just help this offense out, right? Help this special teams unit out as a team. And that's really what they're missing at this point, Court.
Yeah, and I can almost hear Coach O's voice in the back of my head when I was a player. He said, just make routine plays every time, and you'll be an all-star. Literally, make the tackle, make the catch. That's how you become one of the best players in the league. And help that offense out. They will need to. They moved the ball a lot last game for the Tiger Cats. Matt Shields, 345 yards against Montreal, but he also had 2 interceptions. Now, this offense, in a lot of respects, you can say it's greatly improved since the beginning of the season, and there's been a lot of flashes of some very promising things compared to 2022, but they're still trying to completely put their stamp on it and really find their way. You've got a guy like Duke Williams who's really been coming on lately, and I think he's starting to establish himself as one of the go-to guys in this offense. But when we take a look at the Ticats offensive lineup, what stands out to you?
Yeah, well, when I look at the Ticats offense, it's very pass-heavy right now, and they are doing well, but there's these mistakes with these interceptions and these turnovers that are putting them behind the 8 ball, right? Anytime we were playing, there was always a breakdown. So every time you were prepping for a team, you would take 3 games, right? And you would have stats based on these 3 games that would break down tendencies of an offense, tendencies of a defense. And that's what you would focus on. Because you can imagine by week 17, you can't take stats from 17 games because every team's so different over the change. So you take these little snippets and, well, this is now the 4th game. So they have 3 games on Ottawa, and Ottawa has 3 games on the Ticats to break down their stats, right? To break down their tendencies. And what Ottawa's defense is looking at right now is the Ticats will not run the ball, right? The Ticats are going to go to the air, and they are going to continue to go to the air because they are doing well at it. Now, they're going to throw the ball up. There's some of these interceptions that are happening are really putting them behind the 8 ball, but right now, defenses are just sitting back and forcing the Ticats to have to throw into having, 6, 7 guys back there in coverage, just waiting on these deep routes, waiting on all these different plays, which you saw in Montreal with some of the interceptions, because there really isn't a threat of a run game right now, right? Ticats are last in rushing yards, last in rushing attempts. As a defensive coordinator on the other side of the ball against the Ticats, I'm going to say, okay, let's force these guys to what we call dribble left-handed because, for those that don't play basketball, you try to dribble left-handed. That's pretty hard to do, right? So make them run the ball, see if they can beat us that way, right? And that's what that 3-game breakdown of the Ticats is right now, and that's what the league is showing.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the Ticats could run the ball effectively had it not been for some trips to the injury ward for that offensive line, and also playing from behind in some of their, all of their games, quite honestly. They've been playing from behind for the majority of the season, which changes the game plan because James Butler has been great when he touched the ball. Aside from a fumble in week 1, I think he's been one of the consistent bright spots in that offense that you'd love to see more of given the opportunity. But situations will arise in our lives, but you got to be smart about it.
Well, I agree with you. Him and Duke Williams, those two guys, you watch, they flash all over the place, right? Tim White last week as well. So it's just getting those type of guys involved. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Get James Butler the ball as many times as possible when it fits, because obviously if you're playing from behind, you can't be running the ball and losing clock, right?
Yeah, you can't be running the ball, losing clock, and you can't be wasting time when it's the summer, it's beautiful, and you want to go outside, but your grass ain't cut. So you got to go and get yourself one of those Greenworks lawnmowers. If you don't have one, by the way, during Ticats pregame, for every home game, we will be running the Greenworks Listen to Win contest. Fans need to listen for the keyword and go to ticats.ca/Greenworks to enter. This week, one lucky listener will win a Greenworks 40-volt, 16-inch cordless lawn mower, courtesy of Greenworks. And let me tell you, I just cut my lawn with one of these bad boys, and it's looking pristine. I got some brownie points with the wifey, and my kids were cheering me on from the window saying, "Good job, Dad." So this thing is bona fide. If you want to get in there and look good for the summer, watch your game from the backyard too. But I digress. Let's talk about special teams. Okay. I think for Ottawa, they ran the ball a lot. They got a great quarterback coming back. 8 different receivers caught the ball. They got Jalen Acklin, all these names. The most dangerous weapon on this team arguably might be Lewis Ward, who is 10 out of 11 on the season. He was 4 for 4 last week. His long for the season is 50 yards. He's no slouch by any stretch of the imagination, and he's been consistent for years. So how will the kicking game, whether that's punting or field goals, how will that come into play in this one with two offenses who are really still trying to get in their groove?
Yeah, like we have said this multiple times, right? When you have a kicker like the Ticats had last year with Seth Small, right? And Mark Leggio doing a good job for the Ticats now, right? Hasn't missed. But Lewis Ward, who is, they're confident that they're going to get points when they get in field goal range, that he's going to hit more than not. It allows that offense to open up and take shots at this end zone, right? So now instead of, finishing every drive with 0 points because it's a long field goal, you're not really sure what to do, right? You're at least guaranteed 3 because you have this lights out kicker. And now you can start taking those shots to get the 7 points, right, to the end zone. And that's huge for an offensive coordinator to be able to have that confidence to open up some of those more downfield passing plays. Like you said, with deep ball solely, right? That allows him to now take these shots and kind of break a game open. Same thing with the Ticats. They need to get a little more confidence in Mark Leggio. Not that he's not doing well, but just for him to be around a bit more so they have that confidence so that Matt Schultz can take a shot. Where I want to look to, though, on the special teams is the punt return. Brandon Dandridge for Ottawa, he's been doing well. They're getting their offense in good positions, right? He had over 100 yards returning last week, right? What the Ticats really need to work on, and Court, this is new for Tiger Town, is they're currently last in punt return average, right? Especially with a guy like Lawrence Woods back there, right? Speedy B coming back as a player distinction last game against Montreal. Like, Tiger Town's not used to not having these big, flashy return games, and it's just not happening this year, right? Dead last. So that's where my focus is going to be, because when you look at an offense that's struggling a little bit, right, you look at a defense that's struggling a little bit, you need to blow the game open with a couple big returns to put that ball into positive territory for this Ticats, right? Can't be losing the field position battle as well as struggling on either side of the ball. So I'm really looking for McAllister, who's now going to step in for Lawrence Woods, to try to make something happen. Right now, I do want to make it clear that it isn't all on the returner, right? There's 11 other guys out there that need to block, and they need to get together. They need to get, some cohesion together with all these injuries that are piling up. It is a hard thing to do. But that's where I'm looking to for this Ticats team to really turn around, being able to put the ball in the end zone, being able to keep teams out of the end zone, because really this is the group that's going to need to spark either side of the ball.
I think it's interesting, though, because when I think of the great special teams return guys for the Ticats, many of them, while they were at their prime, were spot duty guys on offense or defense, and then full-time returners. And maybe it's the transition from Lawrence Woods going from being a focused return guy to being a little bit on defense, not even a little bit, being full-time on defense and a little bit of a returner. Maybe that impacted the returns that he was having this season. Not sure. No one can really tell, but I think back to the guys who were really good. Of course, Brandon Banks, at the peak of his return years, he was coming in and playing on offense a little bit. You think of a guy like Frankie Williams. I even go back as far as Tyrell Singfield. All these guys, they were able to go and get a rest during the regular course of downs and then come onto the field fresh before they broke it wide open. So maybe that is something that's having an effect there, but we'll see how this game goes, and the return game will absolutely play a factor. Short fields are an offense's best friend, and whoever can create the most of them will give themselves a huge advantage. So as we get closer to the end of this one, looking at a key matchup in this game, if somebody is tuning this on, they haven't watched anything yet this season, who would they be looking to as somewhat of a proxy to how this game's going to go, or who has the potential to blow this one open as far as a matchup?
Yeah, the first one I'm going to look at, and it's because, the Ticats have been struggling keeping guys healthy on that offensive line, is really the trenches, right? So it's a encompassing offensive line versus the Ottawa defensive line. Right now, Ottawa leads the CFL in sacks, right? And Ticats offensive line, it seems like it's a new person there every time. So in order to get Matt Schiltz in that offense comfortable back there, and not even just that weapon that we talked about, James Butler, going, it's going to be starting up front with that O-line, being able to control this really, really well put together Ottawa defensive line, and being able to open up these gaps to control the ball and give Matt Schiltz a little bit of time to find the Duke Williams, the Tim Whites, the Richie Sandanis downfield and get those big chunk plays. So that's what I'm looking for initially, because it's, no secret of football where the offensive line and the defensive line battle is really who's going to end up winning that game. And right now it's a good test for this Ticats offensive line against one of the best in the league from Ottawa.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I'll be very interested to see how Stavros Katsantonis does against Jeremiah Masoli, who is effectively getting his first live action reps in over a year. So there's got to be not necessarily nerves, even though those might be apparent, but I don't necessarily think nerves would rattle a guy with so much experience as Jeremiah has. It's more so knocking off the rust and seeing things at game speed, because you can't simulate a game in practice no matter how hard you go, because they will always blow the whistle in practice if you're at the moment of truth of actually getting smoked by somebody on defense. So Stavros versus Soli, that would be an epic battle, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of 50-50 balls, deep balls up the seam, windows that are a little bit too small that he tries to fit it into anyways. But an excellent quarterback and a rangy defender, that's something for primetime TV I'm looking forward to tonight. And if there was any other players who would be X factors in this one, not necessarily a matchup, but just to keep an eye on some focal points, where would you direct fans to draw their attention?
Well, and this is more of a mentality and a personality battle, but Richard Leonard and Jalen Acklin, Ticat fans know Jalen Acklin, know the fiery competitor that he is, and Richard Leonard is the exact same way. Maybe a little bit quieter on the outside, but he is the exact same way, and there will be words spoken between these two. But I'm very, very interested to watch that battle when they're able to, between Jalen Acklin and Richard Leonard, because really two of the best in the league going up against each other that are going to line up across Jalen Acklin in the field side slot. and Richard Leonard in the field side halfback spot, right? So they're going to be matching up all the time. When Mark Washington dials up cover one, man-to-man coverage, and it's your best versus our best, let's see what happens, that's going to be a good matchup to watch.
Yeah, Richard Leonard's footwork is a thing of beauty. I love to see a good DB operate and execute. So if you're in Tim Hortons Field, make sure you check out that sideline camera. It gets up and close, and you see them talking. You might not be able to hear them, but you could read the lips. It will be getting chippy, and that's exactly what we want. This is the division battle, the first of 3 tilts between Hamilton and Ottawa. This one is a battle of 3rd and 4th in the East, but who knows the impact of this game later in the season. The CFL season in 2023 is really just getting underway, but we're excited for this one tonight, 7 p.m. kickoff, 6 o'clock pregame show with Bubba O'Neill and Andy Fantuz at 7 o'clock. RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker have the call. And of course, this was Tiger Cats Game Day presented by Tiffany Gate Fresh Gourmet. My name is Courtney Stephen. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to go check us out on YouTube. Subscribe there. Subscribe anywhere where you download podcasts. And make sure you check out my boy Mike Daly on social media too. He's a great follow. We were out on the town last week, and so there might be some interesting Easter eggs if you check him out on social media. But yes, this was Tiger Cats Game Day presented by Tiffany Gate Fresh Gourmet. And until next week, we hope you have a great game day. Peace.
It's game day and you're ready. So are we. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly are here every game day with their insights into today's game. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.